few years ago, Deus Ex got a modernised soundtrack titled Conspiravision, and it's taken me this long to know what to say about it, I guess. For those of you who don't know, the musicians behind the original Deus Ex soundtrack were geniuses. The tunes were great, the main theme was bold and memorable, and it is literally impossible to dislike the UNATCO song. Literally impossible. This is despite the entire game's soundtrack being constrained to a weird file format called UMX. Why was this? Oh, who knows. Smaller file sizes, I guess, and why is that dog barking every time I talk? Just think of it as being a sample-based version of MIDI, and it's why the music from games like Deus Ex and the original Unreal Tournament have such a unique feel to them. Kind of like they're being played out of a cheese grater. So what makes Conspiravision so exciting is that it's done by the same musicians as the ones behind Deus Ex, but they're now older, more experienced, and finally free of UMX's cheese gratery constraints. Problem is, this is probably not the remake of Deus Ex music that you want. Because let's be honest, you don't know what you want from remade Deus Ex tunes, do you? Should they be the same songs but with newer instruments? Or totally re-envisioned versions of those tracks? Because we get a bit of both in this album, but I'm still not entirely happy. It's a hard album to summarise, but in short, it's certainly got more sophisticated instruments than the original game's music had, but is still best, in my opinion, when it remains most faithful to the original renditions. Apart from Synapse Away, which is genuinely very good and probably better than the Hong Kong songs from the original game, even though that pains me to admit it. If you haven't played Deus Ex, then you might actually be in a better position to judge these new compositions than I am, because I'm clearly very biased about this. Even when I recently played the remade Deus Ex with better graphics and stuff, I still had to use the original soundtrack option because I like it that much. If this is the first time you're hearing these tracks, then please let me know in the comments section what you think of them when compared with the original versions. So we'll start with the main tune. Well, I say main tune, but the Conspiravision's rendition of it is oddly lacking the main tune. I can hear all the bits in the background, and it sounds like that bit that goes da 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 is about to start, but it never does. It's like he accidentally muted that track before hitting the render button. This bit here still sounds awesome. And it gets me in the mood to drop a crate on somebody's face, but what it really needs is more da 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 da. How ironic that a song titled So It Begins never really gets started. What a shame. I think this opening track dampened the whole album for me. Had the main theme remained more faithful, then I'd have been more lenient of deviations to the other tracks. So like I said, I've had to sit on this album for a few years to try and learn to appreciate what's here instead. The next song is The Training Room, and here we start to see what's going on. Some of the tracks from Conspiravision lack the tunes that made the original so great. It seems as though Alexander Brandon has gone out of his way to build a new song from the backings of the originals instead. In The Training Room's defense, we do hear a bit of the tune towards the end, but it shows the direction he's decided to take some of his remade songs in this collection, and it's a move that I think will upset fans of the originals. And the third song in the collection is Liberty Island, and beyond the first few seconds, becomes utterly unrecognisable. This is not Liberty Island. I don't know what it is, and this is a bit of the game that I've played through 100 times. Alexander must have seen something in the original versions that I didn't, and then decided to build entire tracks around those invisible things. These first three songs are, in my opinion, the worst in the collection, and it's just as well it stops being bad by the fourth track because that happens to be the UNATCO song. With the possible exception of the main tune, I think this is the song that most people will be interested in. But this is a song not done by Alexander Brandon, but is instead done by Michel van den Bos. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Michel also worked on the original Deus Ex music, as well as some of the most iconic tracks from Unreal Tournament, like the Facing Worlds one. I personally preferred his style in those games. I feel like he has stuck more closely to the original versions than Alexander has for this Conspiravision collection. Which is good news for fans of UNATCO, who will be happy to know that this one still sounds like UNATCO, but with more modern instruments. And get this, it's 10 minutes long. The first 3 or so minutes are familiar, then it goes off on a bit of a weird and new sounding tangent, which is okay I guess, but probably isn't worth 7 minutes in length. But that's fine because it doesn't take away from the first 3 minutes, does it? Maybe he didn't have time to finish the tune for Deus Ex, and this is what it would have sounded like had he been given more time. So yeah, what we get is okay, but it's unlikely to be your favourite remix of UNATCO, because there have been many made over the years. The tunes in Deus Ex had several stages to them. The first was the tune everybody knows it for, then the second version is more action-packed, for when you accidentally trip mine the ladies' toilets. Michel has decided to split the UNATCO song into 2 tracks, and this second, more action-focused one, again, remains a decent remake of the classic tune, but it doesn't add anything too exciting to it. Michel plays it safe, but I'm happy about that because the few times he does deviate, I don't like what happens to the tracks. Lebedev's Airfield, for example. It's not got the same feel as the original song anymore, and that makes it a really hard one for me to judge. I definitely feel the strongest bits of this track are where it returns to recognisable bits from the original version, in particular during the last minute. There was one odd song out in Deus Ex, and that was the Hong Kong Streets music. It stood out as being totally different from the rest of the game. Like, I know it's not that great, even though I love that segment of the game and have grown to love the song for what it is, but it was almost meme-worthy, and I think the way that Alexander has tackled the Hong Kong tunes in this album has resulted in the best track of the entire collection. The Synapse is sort of like a mixture of several tunes from the Hong Kong segment of the game, all rolled into one excited ball of activity. It simultaneously sounds familiar, yet new, and it's a great tribute to that part of the game. I guess this is what I wanted from a remade album, and this is the one track that I think it was worth releasing Conspiravision for. Another large open hub in the game was the New York segment. And Alex's remix of this song isn't quite so brave. It's sort of like a modernised version of the track, but with a quieter main instrument. But of most value to it is the fact that this track now has an ending. The last minute is full of weird new bits, but it's definitely an improvement over the abrupt loop that the original tune suffered from. Maybe because I've played the earlier levels of the game the most, I have the strongest opinions about the earlier songs in the album, and the later ones to me just sound like decent remixes, and with more sophisticated instruments. Duclair's Chateau is just as beautiful as the original song was. Conspiracy Theory makes a decent track out of a few songs that I already liked, while somehow managing to miss all my favourite bits. Ocean Lab Combat has been upgraded from combat backing track into a proper song, while the Ocean Lab track has been downgraded from song into atmospheric backing track. Area 51 takes the weakest bit from the original song and makes it into something new that's worth listening to, which I commend. And the credits tune I see as being a bit of a side grade because the original's instruments managed to sound decent enough already. The one surprising omission from the collection is The Nothing, which was a tune from the original game that I felt had the most remake potential. Meanwhile, I was surprised to see the Paris dance track here. I always felt like the tunes that were played in the clubs in the game were throwaway tracks, but Michel clearly saw something in this one and decided to make it into something bigger. Good for him, though it's not that memorable. Conspiravision attempts most of the iconic tunes from the game, fails at some and is decent enough at others, but I wouldn't say it's essential listening for anybody. It probably won't mean much to new listeners and could simply disappoint fans of the originals. But that's remixes in a nutshell, I guess. But Conspiravision is certainly a curiosity. It answers the question that nobody asked, that being, what would Deus Ex's music sound like if it was made today? I started off deeply disappointed with the result, but since its release I have warmed to most of the tracks. I guess I wanted the impossible from it, and obviously I didn't get that. I don't know what I wanted, but I never asked for this.